We're currently speedrunning music theory is what we're doing. Okay, scales. What is a scale? A scale is the most common and simple way that we organize notes. The number one most basic type of scale that you're ever going to see is called a major scale. In the key of C, it is all white keys on the keyboard, starts on C, ends on C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's a much more efficient way to look at scales that makes them a lot more versatile. If you look at it based on notes, then you kind of got to do a bunch of memorization, right? D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat would be the key of D flat. But instead of having to memorize all these notes, it's much easier to just look at things in terms of what we call intervals. Intervals are very simple. They're just assigning a number to each note of our scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, right? That 1 is an octave up from where we start. So we think of both of those most of the time as being kind of 1 or root or whatever you want to call it. There is one exception to that rule that we'll get to in a little bit, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. Fundamentally, easiest way to think of a major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? Intervals. Makes everything easier because that applies in any key, whether that's key of C, key of A, is still going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, right? Even though note-wise that's A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, technically. It's just as easy to think about it in intervals. What do I do if I'm switching and learning a different scale and I can never remember the keys while I'm actually playing it? It's a great question. This is where you can use scale formulas. That's what this is called. So a major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. What does that mean? Well, that means that anytime you say whole, you're skipping a key. Anytime you say half, you're not skipping a key. And we're referring to that by saying whole steps and half steps. So a half step are two keys, white or black, doesn't matter, that are directly adjacent to each other. A whole step is skipping over one of those, right? So our major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Our minor scale is whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Yes, +2, +2, +1. Absolutely. G major is still going to be whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? It's just that half is going to land in a slightly different spot because you have the F sharp. Scales are also very much the key to understanding what chords are, right? Because any scale, the notes within any scale are going to be able to build chords for you. That's how we build chords. What is a chord exactly? Well, a chord is just any time we're playing more than one note at the same time. That is a chord. That is a chord, right? And the type of chord that we're playing is defined by the notes from the scale that we use to make that chord. So in the case of a major scale, in the case of the vast majority of scales, actually, to build chords out of those scales, the most basic way to do it is to use the first note, always, because that's our root note, that's what we call our tonic, right? Our third note, and then our fifth note. That would be a C major chord, right? Now, alternatively, if we're playing a minor scale, that will allow us to make a minor chord. Right? There's our major. Third note of our minor scale is right there. In the case of C, it's E flat. We call this a flatted third. This is like when I was talking about intervals a moment ago. This is why intervals are so useful, because we can now start to define lots of different types of scale shapes and therefore different types of chord shapes, right? Our intervals for our major scale are all just the regular numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, all the way back down, right? When you start altering those notes is when you get into different types of scales. So what we call a natural minor, or just a minor scale, we flat or lower by a half step the third note of that scale, the sixth note of that scale, and the seventh note of that scale. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. And to build a minor chord out of that scale, we take the first note, the third note, which is that flatted third, and then the fifth note. These are called major and minor. They are also called triads. They're called triads because they have 3 notes, right? The 2 most common types of chords you will ever encounter, major, minor. Major generally sounds happy, it sounds brighter. Minor generally sounds sadder or more melancholy and darker, right? Intervals do a lot of things for us. Intervals allow us to very quickly and very effectively communicate different musical ideas. They allow us to define chords. They allow us to define melodies, all just by using numbers in a way that's really easy to understand and explain to somebody else or think about in terms of when you're writing a piece of music. Doesn't matter what style it is. We also use it to think about chord progressions, right? So instead of saying, oh, the chords are C major, G major, A minor, F major, for example, you can literally just say 1, 5, 6, 4, because that corresponding to C being that 1 just means that the chords are a C chord followed by a G chord, followed by an A chord, followed by an F chord. Now, how can we tell in that circumstance whether those chords are major or minor? By using our modes, right? We talked about modes a little bit last week, but the modes, just to reiterate, are the idea of starting that same sequence of notes on different notes within the sequence, right? So that's starting it on C. If we start that same scale on a D and play the exact same notes, we get a D minor scale, and that makes a D minor chord, right? If we started on E and ended on E, we get an E minor sound. We then get F major, G major, technically a G dominant with a flatted 7th. We'll talk about that in a second. Then an A minor, and then the 7th one is called the Locrian. It's a weird scale. Nobody uses it. Don't worry about it. What's important is you get the following chords if you go up using the systems of modes. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. And when you start looking at all of it using your intervals, 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor. So now how can we make these chords bigger and more complex and more nuanced? Well, we can add what we call chord extensions. Right? What are chord extensions? Chord extensions are just additional notes added onto the top of the chord that change or the character of the chord or give more nuance or depth to the chord. So how exactly do we pick which notes to add as chord extensions? It's actually pretty easy. The easiest way to approach it is to continue the pattern of our triad, right? So what's the pattern of our triad? Well, it's the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, which means it's basically skip 1, play 1, right? Skip the 2, play the 3. Skip the 4, play the 5. Skip the 6, play the 7. Right? That would make it a 7th chord. This is a major 7 chord. What would we do with minor? Well, if you remember what I said, 1, 2, flat 3 for our minor scale, right? We flat the 3rd, 4, 5, flat the 6th, flat the 7th. So if we're adding a 7th on top of our minor chord, it's probably going to be a flatted 7th. We would call this a minor 7 chord. Major 7 chord, minor 7. Now, something really interesting happens if we keep this pattern going. Skip the 2nd, play the 3rd. Skip the 4th, play the 5th. Skip the 6th, play the 7th. Skip the 1 and play the 2nd. Remember how a minute ago I said we always think of this as a new 1, the 2nd octave, until, here's the exception to that rule, promised you we'd talk about it. This now we want to think of as 8. So skip the 8 and play the 9th. We call this the 9th. Why do we call it the 9th? Because our chord extensions always go up. That's a 9th. Very good. In fact, that's exactly. Skip the 10th. Play the 11th. That would be an 11th chord. Kind of a weird one, because you have that in there. A major 11 doesn't really work very well because of that dissonance. What you can do is you can play a sharp 11. Ooh, what's that? That's delightfully bright and kind of unsettling, right? We love that. Keep it going. Skip the 12th. and play the 13. Ooh. That's a lovely sound, isn't it? Now, somebody watching might notice something really interesting here, which is if you look at, it sounds like a light bulb over your head. Absolutely. Ooh, how lovely. If you look at what I'm playing on screen, look at the top 3 notes. That's a D major triad. This gives us an idea that we call slash chords. Slash chords are when you take 2 chords and you play them together at the same time. And you think of the slash, you would write this as D over C. And you would write it out as D slash C. And that slash means kind of over, played over top of. So you have D, F sharp, and A. That's a D major triad. Stick that over a C. That's lovely. We could do this with a G. That's also lovely. That's nice, right? You can combine all kinds of different chords. B flat over C, which you could also call a dominant 11th. You can get really, really deep into all this stuff. But the thing that you need to worry about is when it comes to chord extensions, is just, again, adding these additional notes on top of your chord. And you can build really, really, really lovely shapes. Like our major 9. Our minor 11 is really, really nice. You can then alter some of those extensions. For example, what if we played a minor triad, but instead of playing a flatted 7th, we played that? Ugh. Suddenly it sounds like James Bond. We call this a minor major 7. It's a minor chord with a major 7 extension on top. What about if we take a major chord and flatted the 7th? Well, that gives us a dominant chord. Very popular in funk music. Right? Funk, rock, blues, uses jazz, uses dominant chords all the time. Right? And then you can add extensions on top of that. Right? What if we take a dominant chord, natural 3rd, flatted 7th, add a flat 9 to it? Where's our 9th note? Ooh. Suddenly things got very sinister. What if we add a sharp 9 to it? Oh, so dirty. Sharp 9s make excellent resolutions. If you've ever listened to jazz music, I guarantee you've heard this before. Ooh, what a lovely resolution. That's a G, dominant, sharp 9, flat 9. You see up top, I'm adding those extensions, B flat and A flat. That's sharp 9, flat 9. Resolve it back down to a C minor. Why does that work so well? This gets into the idea of voice leading. Well, what the hell is voice leading? Voice leading is how we can start connecting chords together in very, very cool and unique ways. So that particular transition right there works so well because we have a few different shapes happening inside of this. This is where voice leading, the idea of voice leading comes from. And when we say voice leading, what we're talking about are voices, individual notes within our chord. Okay? Right there I have 5 voices. I have G, B, D, F, and B flat. On top, we have this B flat that leads down to a G. First, it's the sharp 9 of the G chord, it's the flat 9 of the G chord, and then it's the 5th of our ultimate C minor chord, right? What's our second voice doing? This F. Well, it can do a couple of different things. It stays static over the G, over the sharp 9, over the flat 9, and then it can either resolve up also to that G, and you get those 2 voices kind of resolve into each other, right? They enclose that G and resolve to it. You could also look at it as voice leading down to an E flat. So here's our first two voices. Here's what they're doing. That's our top voice. Our next voice down is doing this. Right? Let's keep looking at it. What's our next voice down? It's a D. It's this note. And same thing, it's static over the two G chords, sharp 9, flat 9, and then it resolves up to our E flat. So it's going, right? What's our next voice down? B, natural. It's also being static and doing that. Our G, which is the very bottom root of the chord, can stay static as well. So all of your voices, top voice, next voice down, next voice down, next voice down, next voice down. Voice leading. It's one of the most useful tools that we have in our arsenal. It's always about finding your way home. That is such a delightful way of putting it, Roller Coaster. Absolutely. It's about finding your way home, and it's about finding a way to take the listener's ear and guide it into what is happening next. What are some other tools that we can use to help us voice lead? Well, we also have this idea that we call inversions. So let's look at our basic major chord again. Okay? Major triad, C, E, G, 1, 3, 5. We can play those three notes a bunch of different ways. We just flip the order of them. C, E, G, take that C, zoop, flip it up top. I call this a first inversion major chord. Okay? Take that E now, do the same thing. Zoop, flip it up top. Second inversion major chord. We can play this one major chord and yet give it a whole bunch of momentum and just shoot it straight up the keyboard. You could write a whole song just by doing that, right? What happens when you start bringing other chords into the fray? Let's take a random chord. Let's say D major. D, F sharp, A, right? Watch what happens if we just play those two chords. If we just sat there and played, that's kind of boring. Like, it definitely sounds happy, but it just kind of stays in one spot. What about this? Oh my God, we're floating off into the sky all of a sudden. Inversions. They're incredibly, incredibly powerful. Let's look at another context of how we can use inversions, one that more specifically relates to voice leading. Let's say we have a chord progression, and our chord progression is as follows. C major, G major, A minor, F major. We've all heard this chord progression 9 million times. There's literally thousands of very famous pop songs that use exactly this progression. Right? Instead of just taking these big blocky chords and jumping around, that's fine, works okay. We can make it work a whole lot better by using voice leading. So remember what we were just talking about. We have all these different voices within our chord. Where can we move them? Well, we can move them to different inversions. So our first chord, C, E, G. Our second chord is a G major. What notes constitute G major? Well, G, B, and D. Well, we already have a G in our C chord, so why would we move that G all the way down here unless we absolutely have to? We shouldn't. Oh shit, look at that. First inversion G major chord. We've only had to move two notes and we've moved them by barely a step. Okay, well what about our A? Well, we kind of have two options. Because an A is just A, C, and E is our A minor chord. That kind of works. That's got like a descending vibe to it. We could also go, ooh, that's a bit more of a lift. I like that a little bit more, right? It's a little brighter. Now, what about an F? Well, our F major triad is F, A, and C. Well, what are we playing right now? C, E, and A. Well, conveniently enough, F is a half step away from E. So instead of our chord progression bouncing all over the place here like that, right? Now we've shrunk it down and we can get exactly the same progression by just doing this. Okay? Let's move that whole thing up an inversion. Let's invert the whole thing up again. Now we are harmonizing our way up through the inversions of this chord progression. It's all just patterns, it's all just moving things ever so slightly, ever so delicately, keeping things together and looking at things through the lens of chords, scales, inversions, voice leading. Once you actually watch them in action and you start to think about it, they're not particularly difficult things to learn. They're very simple patterns. You just have to think critically about it a little bit. This is the stuff that when I hear people go, music theory is really complicated and scary, I'm like, it seems that way because we have all these spooky words. We have words like mixolydian and words like modulation and words like cadence and resolution. And those all sound incredibly intimidating and crazy. They're really not. Inversion is literally take a note, flip it up to the top. That's it. That's all an inversion is. So now you know a fancy word to get to sound smart. But it's an incredibly useful songwriting tool to make your chord progressions a lot easier to play. And I guarantee you, all of you guys watching, you already know most of this stuff because you've been listening to music your whole life, and this is just functionally how music works. I can't tell you how many times I've been teaching a course or one-on-one with a student and started talking about this stuff, and they just immediately go, oh yeah, I recognize that. Absolutely. It's yeah, you know how this works. Pretty much everybody I've ever met who's interested in making music has a really good idea of what chords should resolve to what other chords. And you can hear it in your head, you just don't necessarily know the words for it. And that's just a problem of vocabulary. That's not a problem of ability or of experience. We've all had these patterns ingrained in our heads our entire lives because this is how all of popular music works. And all of this stuff applies. I'm kind of playing stuff that sounds like pop or whatever. This is not just for pop music. You can use all of these ideas in electronic music production. And it just lets you create things yourself instead of just always reaching for a sample pack.